Hey guys, Hannah here from Reality Awareness. Welcome to my page, welcome to my channel. I've got a bit of a sensitive topic that has been tapping me on the shoulder to talk about, so here I am talking about it. Please share this if you think that this can help somebody with infant loss or miscarriages or abortions, or they've had that in the past and it was just shoved under the carpet or had to be kept secret or anything like that. This is a very sensitive topic, but it's also a very important topic because there's so many women that go through this and are not given the space to grieve it properly. And in that causes all these issues in their life, let alone trying to have another baby. So I really want to speak to this deeply. If you've got any questions about this specific topic, obviously pop them in the comments and I will answer them for you. So let me just bring this up and share this as always. And yeah, let's dive into this sensitive topic because there's been a lot of it coming up for some reason. And we did just come out of sacral chakra. I probably should have done it on sacral chakra week, but all in all, it's all perfect. I was going through my own nourishment stuff last week. All right, sharing this and I shall be present. There's a couple of specific things that I really want to talk about with this as well. All right, so I'm just gonna open my notes. I should have done that beforehand, but hey, everyone's joining, so that's all perfect. All right, awesome. So I have done a live stream on fertility in the past, fertility issues, why you can't fall pregnant, rituals that you can do to increase fertility. Very deeply connected to the ear chakras is our is fertility. Obviously, sacral chakra, womb, ovaries. They look like our ears, ovaries. It's very, very connected. Opening, feminine, receiving. If you've got fertility issues, work with the ear chakra consciousness. Really, really important in opening to receive in general. Now, so I won't speak too much about that specifically because I have done a live stream on that before, and I'm going to pop that link in the comments just so it's there, or if you're watching this on replay, send me a message and I can send you the link for it as well. So there is a lot that I cover in that video. It's over an hour long, of course, because that's how I do things, is I go into deep detail about it, right? So I'm just gonna pop this in the comments and bring this live stream up so that I can see the comments there if people have got any questions about it. All right, so very sensitive topic. Yeah, very, very sensitive topic. The main thing that I want to talk about on this live stream is the thing that I've been seeing over and over and over again recently, and it's like it affects everything. Okay, so if you've lost an infant, like stillbirth, or if you've had a miscarriage, or if you've had an abortion, it's really, really important to give yourself the grief time, right? Now, whether it was an abortion, a miscarriage, or a stillbirth, it's had a big impact on you. Yeah, no doubt it's had a big impact on you. Now, even if it was quote unquote your choice and you had an abortion, the level of grief is still the same as if you wanted the child, or we wanted to have a child, we had a miscarriage or whatever. Now, some people might disagree, and I'm like, no, definitely not. Okay. And the biggest thing that I see lately that's coming up over and over and over again, which is prompting me to speak about this, is that women who are not given the space to grieve an abortion, a miscarriage, a stillbirth, no matter what age, that grief sits in your sacral chakra, in your womb, and it blocks you being able to have another baby. Yeah? It blocks you being able to receive your desires and your purpose. That is in your womb. Yeah? Now, if you follow me, we've been talking in the sacral chakra just last week The sacral chakra is where we gestate our life purpose. It's where we give birth to new realities, no matter what it is that we are trying to manifest, whether it is another baby or whether it's our life purpose or whether it's anything in particular that we're trying to manifest. If you've had an abortion, a miscarriage, or lost a child through stillbirth, that grief sits in your sacral chakra, in your womb, and it blocks all other manifestation desires, okay? Whether you want another child or not, if you've got issues with manifesting or receiving money or love or anything like that, or you've got weight issues, that sacral chakra is where the grief is stored, okay? Now, when I had an abortion several years ago, was the hardest decision of my life, okay? And it was an experience for me that now I can speak about in a sense of I know how important it is to release the grief, because if you do not, it will sit in there and it will block everything else. Now, whether you've had, again, a miscarriage, an abortion, or a stillbirth, what I've found is that every single bleed that I had after my abortion, so every time, I'd come around for my monthly bleed, my menstrual cycle, I would be howling grief. It would be howling grief like I lost the child again. And it's really important to understand that if you've had a miscarriage or a stillbirth, or you have had an abortion, and you haven't let yourself howl that howling grief, especially for that 9 months after you've chosen or you've lost the child, if you do not allow yourself to drop in that deep level of grief every single time you bleed, you're storing the grief and it sticks in you, right? And now we all know that if we're not allowing our emotions out, causes all sorts of other issues, okay? Now, talking about miscarriages for a moment, when we have had a miscarriage, sometimes we're like trying to fall pregnant again, of course. And if we have a miscarriage, there's several reasons why that is, okay? Now, in a point where the woman can be too much in her masculine and is go, 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 go. That child is like, hey, mom, there's no room for me to come in. I'm not coming in yet. Number one. So creating the space to be able to bring a child in. Now, there's also, like stopping, handing work over. So get out of your masculine. Sometimes you actually physically need to stop. And if you do not stop and listen to that, you will be physically stopped. You'll break your foot or something, which is what happened to someone I did know, right? And then she fell pregnant after all this time of trying, right? It's kind of interesting. So we must be able to stop. We must be in our feminine. We must be able to receive. So with a miscarriage as well, we could be in a loving relationship. We could be with a partner. We could be in an amazing relationship and we fall pregnant and then we have a miscarriage. Now, there's a thing here. So on the sacral chakra last week, we were talking about how every relationship kind of lives in our sacral, and we have these cords that come in, or these energy lines that connect us to every sexual partner we've ever been with. Especially if there's a sexual partner or a partner that you once loved and you haven't actually let go of that partner, even if you're in a loving relationship now and you love being with that person and it's meant to be and all that jazz. If you have still an attachment to that person that you once loved, and it's not about stopping loving that person now, but energetically you might as well still be in relationship with them, because energetically you're not fully in this relationship. And losing a baby for that is a very real instance of why that miscarriage happened, because energetically you're still actually with this person, you're not with this person. Yeah, the baby and the soul's trying to come through because this is a beautiful relationship that wants to experience in that. However, if you are energetically still connected to a lover from your past and you actually don't want to let go, you didn't want to let go of that relationship, that is what is blocking your womb space from anything else coming in. Yeah? So really important to work with grieving the loss of that relationship, okay? And again, it comes back to the grief. If you haven't grieved a particular aspect of your life, if you haven't grieved a change in a relationship, a loss of a relationship with an ex-lover, with something that you didn't want to happen, with something you wanted to happen, if you don't grieve properly, that grief stays here. We hold on to it and it blocks the space for a baby to come in or for our manifestations to birth. So when I'm talking about grief, I'm literally talking about deep, deep howling core grief as well. Okay, so especially again, and it's a really powerful portal, it's a really awesome gift that we have in a way to have a menstrual bleed every month, because naturally we're more emotional, and it's a perfect time to allow ourselves to go into that deep grief in letting go of that, right? So grieving the fact that you wanted a child and it didn't happen, grieving the fact that you had to choose not to have that child, grieving the fact that you did have a stillbirth, that, you know, like all of that. Like if you haven't grieved howling grief every single time you bleed, right? And this is literally how, like, I literally allowed myself that space to grieve that deeply, like howling grief. Like you probably know what it's like to lose somebody to passing over to the other side, right? If you do not allow that howling grief, you will always stay stuck in it. And it's not about, oh, you should be free of it. Oh, you should have got over this already. Like, it's not coming from that space. I'm talking about energetic blockages in your body that if you haven't howled your eyes out, and I'm talking again, when you've lost that child and every menstrual cycle that you have for the next 9 months, if you don't allow yourself the grief, that deep, heavy grief every single time, right, you're not going to have the energetic space to let anything else in. Like, you're still holding on to it. The most powerful thing, you know, the one question I get asked all the time is, how do I let it go, Hannah? How do I let that relationship go? How do I let this go? How do I let it go? You know, and people are like, how do I forgive? And I'm like, fuck forgiveness. You need to howl your eyes out about the situation. Now, some people don't agree with that. People are like, oh, well, you shouldn't be in that vibration. And I'm like, man, that vibration's sitting in your body. If you don't do something about it, it's going to be sitting in there. It's like hidden away and buried and causing all these health issues, causing all these manifestation blockages. Yeah. So really important to grieve the loss of a relationship, because if you have had a miscarriage and you are trying to fall pregnant again and it's not happening, if you have any stems onto old lovers of your past, even though you're in a loving relationship now, that energetic attachment and love that you have for that person is what is blocking the space. There's no space for that new baby to come in. Like, you might be fully present in the relationship, but energetically you're still with that person back there, right? It's not about, again, not loving them, but you have to be able to energetically release them, especially from your womb. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I'm just checking my notes. Yep. See that I'm covering everything. Yeah. Awesome. So the other thing that's really important is creating a ceremonial ritual. Now, women who have an abortion and repressed tears. Yes, exactly. And, you know, and the other thing is that we're also taught it's not okay to cry. Like, you know, if we have an abortion, we've kind of got all this shame and guilt around, like, oh, it's so bad. And honestly, do you know the stats of an abortion rate? It's like 1 in 3 women have had an abortion and 1 in 4 women have had 2 abortions. That's pretty big numbers. You get a group of women in a room, it's like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, or 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. Like, that's huge, right? And there's so much kind of shame and guilt and like all this stuff on top of it. Or with a miscarriage or stillbirth, it's like, oh, I've done something wrong, or there's something wrong with me. Like, there's all of that. And then we're like got this repressed grief, because grief in our society is not something that's okay. And honestly, it's one of the most powerful things a woman can do to allow herself to get in touch with her femininity, to allow herself to get in touch with her intuition, to reclaim her goddess self back, to reclaim herself back. Right? We're taught to shut it down and it's not okay, or be put in a mental asylum, or there's something wrong with us. Like, and that causes us to stay in that masculine energy, and it's not healthy. It's why we end up the way we end up with all these problems and things not working because of that. So if you are trying to fall pregnant again, I'd really be looking at the grief. Have you actually grieved? Yeah, that loss. Have you, and I'm talking about a good 9 months. And you might think, well, that's a long time to cry, Hannah. And I'm like, well, I guarantee you that if you haven't allowed yourself to grieve or cry, there is a lot more grief in there than just from this current loss. Yeah. And again, if you don't allow yourself to go into this cycle, there's a 9-month healing cycle and an 18-month healing cycle. I talk about this a lot as well. And when we allow ourselves that space, like, you know, if we think about our entire life, right, we might be in a really good place in our life right now, but if things are starting to not work and we haven't actually grieved the loss, that grief is starting to surface, because when we are in a good place and our life is going amazing, you know, as I always say, things always come up from the deep, dark subconscious. Why? Because you're holding a higher vibration now, so that stuff can't come out, but we're like, whoop, that feels right. Then we're crying all the time, or we're crying at the drop of a hat, or we're wondering what's happening. And it's like, you know, because this is trying to get out. Now that deep howling grief is like, you know, when you feel like you can't take another breath, like that's the one that you need to tap into. That's the one that you need to feel safe enough to allow yourself in there, because a lot of us don't feel safe to even cry that deeply, because as a child, we're told if we don't stop crying, you're going to be belted and given something to cry about and dragged down the hallway and put in your room by your, like, dragged down by your arm, like, you know, hello, you know. Yeah, Alison, I definitely watched a replay of the whole thing. I know you just joined. So definitely be looking at allowing yourself to feel comfortable to cry, right? And that's why I say watch a sad movie, listen to music that makes you cry. Specifically, you know, like when you know you need to heal something, okay? And it's a very, very powerful thing to do, to be able to support yourself in that. But again, a lot of us don't feel safe enough to let tears out because of the way we were raised, and it creates a lot of health issues, let alone other blockages in manifesting our purpose or money or love or whatever it is. Like, that creates an energetic blockage, and it does sit in our sacral chakra because that's where the grief is stored. Now, that is also like the portal of life. Like, our umbilical cord is connected there. It's connected to source. It's the main portal of connection. So if there is a blockage in there, we're not able to receive. We might be receiving it, but we're not fully receiving it. And so that's why miscarriages happen, and we go through this cycle, and, you know. All right, so what else do I need to say about that? Okay, so the ritual. So again, allowing yourself to grieve each menstrual cycle is very, very powerful, and it might seem like it's never going to end. It does end, okay? And it gets less and less. And the first couple of times we're like, and then we start to drop into it, and it's really, really intense. Again, it's the grief of like that deep howling grief, you know, like that deep, feel like you can't take another breath, is one of the most powerful like aspects of grief in the world. And honestly, in our Western world, it is very much shunned or looked against or anything like that. There is I just think if I can bring it up, maybe it's maybe it's in here. I can't remember I had it ages ago, and it's about grief, and it's from one of the African tribes, and it's a woman who shared her story, and I can't find it, so all credit goes to this woman. I had it so long ago, and I don't know why it's not in my thing anymore. Anyway, so basically in one of the African tribes, she shares her story when she was a child, and, you know, she was like, I don't know, 5 or 6, right? And she shares this story about how in her tribe growing up, she lost her friends. Like, one of her child friends died, you know. And, you know, she said that for ages and ages, she would, you know, come out of, you know, the tent every morning or whatever, and like, you know, expecting to play with whatever her name was. And she'd be like, and then, you know, one of the women would come up and, you know, say, oh, remember, she's died, you know, and she'd start bawling her eyes out crying. And that would happen over and over again. And, you know, the biggest piece of that article, and I'm covered in goosebumps as I say this, you know, like she said that the people in the tribe wouldn't come up and say, oh, stop crying now. That's enough of that, you know, like they would come up to her and say, have you cried enough? Have you grieved enough? Yeah? Losing somebody, whether it's a relationship breakup, because they can feel like death, yeah, or whether it's grieving the loss of a child, is have you grieved enough? Yeah, and again, it might seem like you're crying and crying and crying and it's never going to stop. But honestly, if you give yourself sacred permission, if you give yourself sacred space every single time you have a bleed, every single time you come to a menstrual cycle, and you make it such a sacred space that you allow yourself to grieve and grieve and grieve and grieve and feel like you can't stop crying, honestly, that 9 months of your life will be one of the most powerful times of your life ever. There is deep power in our womb. And when we are blocking ourselves from the natural cycles of allowing those feelings and emotions that are buried and stored there, we are blocking our sense of power, the seat of our power, the deep seat, like says our soul is anchored in our sacral chakra, right? Yes, down through our base, but that's a big anchor point, yeah? Umbilical cord, anchor point, right? And so when you can allow yourself that grief over and over and over, and it feels like it's never going to end, you are doing deep, massive healing work. No amount of sleep, no amount of meditating, no amount of art therapy, no amount of any sort of therapy negates the deep grief that a woman who hasn't allowed that space in her life to grieve from a pregnancy loss, to grieve from a relationship breakup, it is next level healing. Tears itself release the stress hormone cortisol. You know, when we're stressed out and we're like, oh my God, flight or fight, and the kids are going crazy, and I'm like, I don't know what's going on. That's cortisol running through your brain, right? Can't sleep again. I'm so tired and wired, and I just can't sleep either. Oh my God, right? You know, when you have a big cry and you're like, out. Why? Because tears release the stress hormone cortisol. It is a powerful thing, and that's why children crying, you need to be there with them. You need to sit there and say, hey honey, I can see you're really upset and mummy's not going anywhere. I'm going to stay here with you because you're really upset, and I'm not going when you're really upset. I'm not going to leave you when you're upset. It's okay to cry. Mummy cries. It's okay to feel sad. It's okay to be angry. You don't walk away. Don't lock them in a room. Don't tell them to shut up or give you something to cry about. Like, no. No. Grief is the most healing thing on the planet. And it serves a definite purpose for our physical body to be functioning at its highest capacity. Yeah? So Nicola says, I watched my daughter give birth to her stillborn daughter, and she and I cried a river. Since then, my daughter has had 2 more babies. Awesome. Yeah. Honestly, it's so important. It is so important to how grief. So important. So the other thing, creating a sacred ritual, creating a sacred ceremony. Now that might be like a no-brainer because it's like, oh yeah, we had a funeral, right? Sometimes a modern day funeral is not enough. Yeah, sometimes it is. Sometimes you need to do your own ritual, especially if you had an abortion or a miscarriage, by the way, as well. And, you know, it can be as simple as, you know, buying a bunch of flowers and, you know, releasing each petal into the ocean or into a river. It could be buying a single white rose and burying it in the ground. It could be, you know, creating a song that is like significant and symbolic for you. It could be writing a soul letter and burying it or releasing it in the ocean. It could be any of those things, but doing a sacred ritual, no matter how long ago your abortion was, no matter how long ago your miscarriage was, like this is so important to work with. And it's also why you can, you know, you're crying all the time, or you're really like full of anxiety, or you're on edge all the time. Like if you've got this stuff going on in your sacral, it's why you will be that as well. Yeah. So yeah, feeling like anxious or uneasy or, you know, any of those things because we're not grounded in our body and everything's like, stressy, or you're really affected by other people's energy, like real extreme, clear out the sacral. Yeah. If there's any of that grief sitting in there, it's really, really important. All right, does anyone have any questions? Because like I said, I have done a fertility video where I go into a lot more detail about, you know, actually calling in the soul of a child and other fertility issues, working with the ear chakra, consciousness and all that as well. So if you haven't seen that, please send me a message and I can send you the direct link. You can find it on my website, and obviously I've put the link in the comments for this live stream as well. So that's really important. please share this if you feel that it can help somebody, or tag them in the comments, or send it to them in a private message, or share it on your page, or in a group where you know it can help women deeply come into their power through this sacred space, because it is so important, and it is so underestimated, or not really given the time of day for in our modern day society. So definitely becoming more and more, for sure. However, yeah, it's really, really, really important. All right, so that's what I wanted to share about that. Transcendence is coming up this week, guys. We also start on Friday, and it's the day before our full moon, and the energy's been pretty intense, and it's been pretty like weird feeling. It's been like really weird feeling, yeah. And I did say a couple weeks ago, that the energy of Halloween and the energy of Samhain that's going on around this time, this portal of the 31st of October, is going to be extra intense this year, and people are already feeling it. So transcendence takes us all the way up to the end of November. Sorry, takes us up to the middle of December, in really allowing us to harness these energies that are really prevalent on the planet right now. There is a super amount of expansion going on, but that means that the dark is also expanding in both directions, like a rubber band's being pulled, right? And then we're like going to snap into which direction, the one that we consciously work with on transcending and transforming these energies. And that's exactly what transcendence is about. So you can find the link for transcendence on my page. You can find it on my website, or you can send me a message if you've got any questions about it as well. So, okay, so Nicola says, my daughter sets a helium balloon every birthday with her other children. They go into the beach to release them in Annabelle's memory. Yeah, it's so important, especially for kids as well. I love that she's doing that, because it's a definite thing. So yeah, that's so special. It's just, you know, and like, you know, sharing that African woman and the tribe, like that, you know, that level of connection with being okay. Like, it's so important to teach our children that it's okay to cry, and it's okay to express emotions, because a little shutdown in the voice, in the throat, and that's like why all us adults are like healing from our childhood. And when we can give our children that, they don't have to go through what we went through. So very, very powerful. So love hearing that she's done that and does that, and still connects with that each year. So beautiful. All right, sending you guys lots of love.